welcome back to Crime in Court. This is the 1996 Menendez brothers trial, and this is the defense's case, part 38. Erik Menendez is still on the stand in direct examination with Mr. Levin for Erik's defense team doing the questioning. And as you can see, I am not on screen. I'm not feeling the greatest today, and my hip's hurting, so I am just going off camera, but you'll still have the script in front of you to follow along. So, all right, let's begin. The court says, okay, are we ready to proceed? Mr. Levin says, yes, Your Honor. Court says, let's have the jury out. The jury enters the courtroom. The following proceedings were held. The court says, all right, everybody is present. You may continue your direct examination. Mr. Levin says, thank you, Your Honor. And, oh, I forgot to mention, we are back on December 8th, I believe, where they went to lunch. Oh, no, this was the last recess of the day they went on, and now we're back from the last recess of the day. Mr. Menendez, following the death of your parents, you hired Mark Heffernan as your coach, correct? Yes. Why did you do that? He was my friend, and I had tried to get into Princeton University for that semester and was unable to. I didn't know what else to do with my life. Was your life one of being involved in formal competitive sports from the earliest memory that you have? Yes. Did the fact that you were involved in training and practices of one form or another have anything to do with your ability or opportunity to be with other people, such as friends? Yes. Were you always busy? Basically. You had described your life before as being chaotic. What do you mean? Or what did you mean? Objection, irrelevant. The court says, I don't know if that was his testimony, so perhaps you can clarify that. How would you describe your adolescent years, your teenage years? Your teenage years. Always on the go, always doing one thing after another, going from tennis to school to tennis to getting home, trying to finish my homework and repeating it the next day. Always busy. Was it a regimen that you had established for yourself, or had someone else establish it for you? Objection, irrelevant, overruled. The witness says, my father and my mother. To what extent did your mother and your father control your life? Objection, irrelevant. The court says it's also vague. Mr. Levin says, did you have much say-so on your own during your teenage years to determine what you would do with your time? Objection, irrelevant. Overruled. You may answer the question, says the court. Erik says, I had 4 hours a week by myself. 4. That's it. Okay. Mr. Levin says, and was this 4 hours that you had been established by someone in your family for this particular purpose, to be by yourself? It was 4 hours a week, which something wasn't scheduled for my day, and I could do what I wanted in those 4 hours. And what day did this occur? Saturday night from 6 to 10 or 6 to 8, 2 hours on Sunday. Wow. So he either got 4 hours on a Saturday night to himself or 2 hours on a Saturday night and then 2 hours on a Sunday to himself. And that was it. Were these the only times that you had that you would call, the only time that you had that you would call free time? Yes. Other than the 4 hours a week that you just testified to, was the remainder of all of your time controlled by someone? Again, Mr. Khan objects. As to the vagueness as to what the time period is we're talking about, the court says, be more specific, please. Are we not talking about his teenage years? Did we change subject now? Again, he says, during your teenage years, we're still talking about that, being from that time that you were approximately 13 or 15 to the time that you were 18. What was the question before that? Other than, I'm sorry, who was it that controlled the rest of your time other than those 4 hours a week? Usually, my mother determined well, it was determined by my mother and my father. And setting up on Sunday what my schedule was going to be for the week was usually the same schedule. And then going to tennis in the morning, it was my father that determined when we woke up and how we practiced. And after school, it was my mother who picked me up and drove me to tennis. How would it be communicated to you as to what your weekly schedule would be? My father would sit my brother and I down and he would go over the schedule, what was going to happen Monday through Saturday, basically. How specific was it? Every hour was accounted for. Did he have something written down? Usually. Was he reading off of a list? He had it charted out, hour increments, when there wasn't enough time in the day. We would get up at 5:30, play tennis, go to school by 7 or 8. So usually we'd leave from the tennis court to school and then we'd be in school for however long we were in school. My mother would pick us up from school and she would drive us then to tennis and then she would drive us back by 8 or 9 and then the hours between 9 and 11 were allotted for dinner. You eat dinner at between 9 and 11 at night? Dinner and homework. 2 hours a night for dinner and homework. Not just one or the other, but both. So, yikes. Did you watch a lot of television? No. Did you have a lot of friends during your teenage high school years outside of school? I had one kid that I knew in the neighborhood. Who was that? A boy named Brendan. Other than Brendan, did you have any friends? I didn't know any. I didn't know the other kids in the neighborhood. Were you allowed or disallowed to have children sleep at your house? That was extremely disapproved of. Were you allowed to sleep at other children's houses? I only remember doing so twice. Now, included in your father's structure of what you would be doing during the week, did it get more specific as to what you would be doing, for example, during each tennis practice? Objection. Irrelevant. Sustained. Could you decide on your own who would coach you? No. My coaches tended to cycle. Whenever a coach got close to Lyle or myself, they would be fired and a new coach was selected by my father. Whoa. I've never heard it said in those specific terms that when any coach got close to the brothers, Jose Menendez would fire him, get him a new coach. They can't have any friendships or bonds outside of Jose and Kitty, apparently. And then I'd see them for 3 months, sometimes 6 months, sometimes scattered for a year or two, and then a new coach was brought in. Why did you think that was it your father that did that, the hiring and firing of coaches? Yes, of course. And paid them as well? Yes. Why did you think that your father would fire a coach because the coach got too close to you? Objection calls for speculation. Rephrase the question. Had your father ever indicated to you, communicated to you in any way that you were not to get too close to your tennis coaches? Yes. And what did your father do or say to you that communicated that to you? He lectured my brother and I on friends in general and how he didn't want us to get close to friends, and tennis coaches were never to be considered friends. They were of a type of education and level that he didn't want us coming close to. And whenever a tennis coach would confront my father on different things that he saw happening to Lyle and I, they would immediately be fired. Whenever they seemed to be friendly, my father would ask me, "What kind of conversations does this coach have with you? What kind of things do you do in the lessons? What does he talk to you about? What do you say to him?" My father would have a list made out for me of things that I was to tell the tennis coach we were supposed to practice, or Lyle was supposed to tell the tennis coach that we and I were supposed to practice with the coach, these types of things. And would there be a time where you could, with your coach, say things like, "Hey, I'd like to just work on my backhand today"? Objection, irrelevant. Sustained. Let's move on. Seriously, you couldn't just say, "Hey, I'd like to do something"? You couldn't just make it up as you went along that day? Or your coach? It had to be whatever Jose ordered. But the judge doesn't want that heard, so he says, "Move on." Mr. Levin asks, "Did your father have anything to do with what food you ate?" Yes. And what did your father have to do with what food you ate? Objection, irrelevant. The court says, just asking one question on this subject? Yes, Your Honor, very limited. Depending on the answer, I don't want to bind myself to one, but it will be very brief. The court says, let's make that very brief. The witness answers. He had books he'd buy, a book he'd call Eat to Win, different books he would go to. I remember from the line I was like 8 and through 18. Certainly in those years, we would write down what we ate through the day and submit the list to him at night. He would have it all charted out on what high energy food was. So it was only like high energy foods approved by Jose that they were allowed to eat, apparently. Usually we would fast throughout the weekend. If there was a tournament, there would be only fruits and vegetables. No solid foods would we eat. And he would go down the list in books of what was high cholesterol foods and what was foods that would rapidly burn energy. Foods that you would eat 6 hours before a match, and food was brought by my mother every Friday at the supermarket, and it would be regimented throughout the week. He controlled everything in that household. Did you select your clothes? Objection. My mother did. Mr. Khan says, irrelevant. The court says, all right, what was your answer? He says, my mother did. All right, your next question. Mr. Levin says, were you ever instructed or told by your father that you were to maintain a certain degree of silence concerning your life to your other family members? Yes. And what was it that you were told that you could not talk about? Well, whenever we would have a get together with the relatives, they would come over or we would go over to the relative's house. At times there were cousins that had lived with us and they would have been sat down with us as well. If they weren't living with us, it was just Lyle and I, and they would tell us what we could discuss in terms of how I was doing in tennis, things that happened inside the house that was not to be discussed, obviously, any punishments that were occurring. My mother would tell me when I went over to my Aunt Terry's where to leave my books and what questions to answer about my grades. I remember when I stayed back a year, she didn't want Terry or Aunt Marta to know that. Most things of significance, we were told what things about them we could discuss and not discuss. Terry is Terry Baralt? Yes. Your father's sister? Yes. And Marta is Marta Cano? Yes. She's your aunt? Yes. She is the mother of Peter Cano and Andy Cano? Yes. Now, did you follow those instructions that you were told about not revealing these things that you just testified to your family members? Yes. Were you close with your grandmother, Jose Menendez's mother, who's seated in court? When I was over at her house, we had a very close bond. Was she nice to you? Always. Do you love her? Very much. Felt close to her? Yes. Is there any reason why? How did you refer to her? Mama. Isn't that interesting that he would refer to his own grandmother as a more maternal name than mother? Kitty. Was there any reason why you felt you couldn't tell her about the fact that your father, her son, was molesting you? Different things that I could see, different things that I would understand about her relationship with my parents and my fears in general, yes. You say different things that you saw. What different things did you see? I remember one time in particular, actually, it was several different times, when my mother locked my brother in his room. He would stay there for 6, 10 hours at a time, and there would be no dinner that he would receive, and Lyle would be crying or crying out because he was hungry, and my grandmother, Mama, could or would confront my mother and tell her that she should be giving Lyle food and Lyle needs food and that he's hungry. And my mother would say that this was her house and she would do as she wants in her house. And my grandmother would leave food for my brother under his pillow or under my pillow or sneak us bread behind my mother's back. I remember one time my mother was going to send me to my room, and my grandmother knew it, and she went up to my room ahead of time and put food underneath the pillow because she knew I was going to be there all night. That's very sweet of their grandmother to do that for them. 'Cause she obviously saw what was happening in that house to some degree, at least. So maybe she couldn't have stopped what was going on in the house. Maybe she didn't feel like she could, but at least she was able to. Maybe she didn't know. I'm sure she didn't know the full extent, because nobody did. But at that point, she helped in the ways that she could while she was there. Mr. Levin asks, was there ever a time, Mr. Menendez, when your mother got angry at you for doing something with respect to your grandmother? Yes. And what incident is that? I was home alone, sick, and I was feeling very ill. And I wasn't supposed to answer the phone at the house when I was home alone, and my grandmother. The phone rang and I answered it, and it was Mama. And Mama asked what I was doing home, and was my mother and my father home? And I said no. She asked why I was home, and I said I was sick. So she came over and picked me up and brought me back to her house. And my mother was enraged, and I would hear my grandmother screaming at my mother that I was staying at her house. And I stayed at my grandmother's house that night. And the next day, when I returned home, I was told how that was to never happen again. What would happen if I ever answered the phone at the house again? What were you told that would happen to you? My mother explained to me the different ways in which she would punish me, or could punish me, and told me that the punishment would be severe, generally being locked in the closet without food, things like that. Have you ever seen your grandmother confront your mother? Sometimes, in different ways, when she was over at the house about how we were treated, but generally, my grandmother tried to help Lyle and I behind my mother's back. Is that why you didn't tell her? One of the reasons. Did you ever think of calling the police and telling the police that your father was molesting you? No. Why not? Well, different reasons. One, I had seen the way that my father treated the police and had handled the police. And another reason, I mean, it may sound strange, but I really loved my dad. And he talked about the family lineage and my grandmother and my great grandfather. And I knew the life story of my great great grandfather in Cuba and the ancestry in the family that Papa would tell me, or my father would tell me, and he would tell me about how my great great grandfather was made to kiss the flag of Cuba when a new dictator came over and how he wouldn't, and the honor of the family and pride. I find that to be a lie because if a dictator ordered you to kiss a flag and you didn't, you would no longer have a head or lips to kiss that flag. So are they trying to? Jose was going around saying like a great great grandfather was told to kiss the flag, but when a new dictator came in, he wouldn't. It's the interesting tall tale of your story, Jose, or family story, I should say, and the honor of the family and pride. And I simply wasn't going to destroy my father or my grandmother and my grandfather's father by telling them something that was hurting me. I wasn't doing that. As you understood your father, what would you say was the most important thing to him? The family image. And what was that based on? Was that based on a number of conversations that you had with him concerning the family image? Objection leading. Overruled. Yes. What was the image that your father portrayed of your family? Objection relevance. The court says also vague as to what you mean by portrayed. Mr. Levin says, as you understood your life, was it far different between the type of life that your father wanted you to portray the Menendez family as? Basically. What did you understand the image of the Menendez family was as your father would describe it? Objection irrelevant. Sustained. Was Princeton important to your family? Objection irrelevant. Vague. Sustained. You mentioned that you had, or that your father had done something to indicate, or at least caused you to feel that you couldn't go to the police because of some reason. What reason was it? Generally, the way he talked about the police and the way I saw him treat the police. I remember one time in particular when he was racing to get my brother and I to a tennis tournament, and it was in New Jersey. There are a lot of small roads and hills. It's not like California, and there are little dips and valleys through valleys and small townships, and he was racing along to get us to the tournament, and a police car pulled him over, and he told the police officer that he didn't have time for a ticket and that he had to get to the tournament. We were late, and if the police officer wanted to follow us to the tournament, that's fine, but he did not have time to stay here and deal with getting a ticket when we had such an important event to go to. Imagine being so self-important that you just tell the cop, nope, I don't have time for this. Gotta go, when he pulls you over for speeding. That's an insane story. And the police officer sort of smiled and gave him a ticket after about 15 minutes of the police officer sitting in the car. Oh, so he made him wait. Of the police car. And when he came back and gave the ticket, I remember he signed it and then he ripped it up and he threw it in the back seat where I was. And he drove between 5 and 10 miles an hour for about 5 miles through the country road as the police officer was following behind him. And that's what happened. So because the cop gave him a ticket and he threw a temper tantrum, ripped it up, threw it in the back seat, and then the cop was behind him for about 5 miles. So Jose's like, "Oh yeah, you don't want me speeding? How about I go 5 to 10 miles an hour, and you have to follow behind me?" Wow, what a self-centered. I mean, the only thing I can think of to say is narcissist. Like, who thinks the world revolves around them like that? Jose does. I mean, there's many people on this planet that do, but that's pretty that's something to feel that self-important that you're too good for a ticket and the cop should just follow you to the tournament and then give you the ticket there. Did that event have an impact on you with respect to how you viewed your father with authority figures? I was surprised and amazed that the police officer didn't pull him over and give him another ticket several times, I came to understand in many ways that simply wasn't going to happen with my father. Did you ever in your life see anyone stand up to your father? Never. Had your father done things in your presence with respect to other incidents where you caused, or at least that caused you to realize that it wouldn't do much good to tell anyone about the molestation? Indirectly, I suppose. What about other relatives, other than your grandmother? Why didn't you tell Aunt Marta? Why didn't you tell Terry Baralt, Uncle Carlos? Sometimes objection, irrelevant, overruled. Sometimes when I was over at their houses for a get together, a look that they would give me or a way that they would treat me made me suspect or suspicious that they knew what was going on, and I felt very embarrassed by that. So I wasn't sure for a long time that they knew and what they really didn't know. The way they treated my father was very different from every other family member. My father, in throughout my relatives, was looked at as an idol figure in terms of he was the more powerful, successful man of that generation in my family's throughout my relatives. And he was viewed upon, he was feared, and he was in a way worshipped, and it would have been ridiculous to go to them for any reason and complain about my father. Is that really how the family felt, or is that just how Jose made them think the family felt? Was your grandmother close with your father? I think so, yes. Was it very clear to you that she loved her son, your father? Yes. Did it concern you at all about what telling her might do? Yes. And what were you feeling? I wasn't sure whether she would believe me. I wasn't sure whether she would want to hear it or whether I would want to do that to her and make her have to deal with the fact that this was happening and now she confronts someone that she loves so much. I wasn't going to do that to her. You indicated before that Andy Cano was the only person that you talked about the molestation to. Is that correct? Yes. And you indicated that you had told Andy Cano some things. Did Andy Cano ever say anything back to you after you told him the information that you told the jury? What do you mean by back to me? Well, did he say anything in return to you like what you should do? He wanted me to talk to his mother, my Aunt Marta, about that, and I made him swear never to tell her about this. He told me that he would try and find out. I brought it up with him on several different occasions. I remember one time when he was in my room, and I remember when we were in sleeping bags, and I would tell him a little bit more of the information, and we would talk about it. And but he was 2 years younger than me, so he didn't give me any extensive advice. Now, during the various conversations you had with Andy Cano, did you actually tell him your dad was touching you? More than that. What did you tell him, more specifically? I told him that my dad would touch my genitals and that I would touch his, and we would massage each other. I remember when I was in my room one time, he wanted to know more about whether it hurt or not, and I told him that it hurt. And he asked where, and I told him in my butt. And we talked about what that meant, and I tried to avoid what that meant, and just different things like that. Did you ask Andy Cano or make him promise anything about telling what you told him? Well, I made him promise never to tell his mother and his brother, or in any way that it could get back to my mother. Now, where is Andy Cano today? He lives with my. No, I guess he doesn't. He's going to school in Florida. You indicated before that when you were left alone, you called your grandmother, and that caused a problem with your mother. Did your mother leave you alone frequently during this period of time? Objection, irrelevant. Sustained. State doesn't want the jury to know that Kitty was a very, very neglectful mother. Mr. Levin says, did you ever feel that there was any person that you could tell that you felt close enough to, that you could tell about the molestation? Besides Andy? Besides Andy. No. Why couldn't you tell a teacher at school? My teachers at school, in general, were afraid of my parents. And was it an isolated incident of a teacher, one teacher throughout your lifetime that was, in your opinion, afraid of your father, or was this a regular occurrence where consistently and on many occasions teachers were afraid of your parents? Consistently. In terms of not wanting my parents to show up for teacher conferences, or I remember my dad coming home and laughing about basically pushing and assaulting one of my brother's female teachers. He assaulted one of Lyle's teachers? A time when one of my brother's teachers was supposed to call my dad about a grade change and was too afraid to call my dad. Mr. Khan says, I would object to speculative hearsay, no personal knowledge. The court says, the last remark? Mr. Khan says, yes, Your Honor. Objection sustained as to reference to this incident involving a teacher and change of grade. That portion of the answer stricken. Did any teacher ever indicate to you, Mr. Menendez, that teacher was afraid of your father and mother, that bared upon your decision not to tell teachers that you had been molested or were being molested by your father? Objection calls for hearsay. Court says, all right, is being offered for the truth of the matter asserted or only to reflect the witness's state of mind? The latter, Your Honor. All right, it will be received for the limited purpose not to be considered for the truth of whatever these individuals are reported to have said. Okay, the witness says yes. And does a specific incident come to your mind? Many incidents come to my mind. Let's talk about the first one that you can think of. Can you tell the jury of an incident where a teacher indicated to you that they were afraid or intimidated by your father? Do you want me to tell you the incident? Yes. One of my teachers told me about my parents. She was my counselor and also my teacher, and about this general feeling in the school about my parents and about how she didn't want to tell my parents some of the bad grades I was getting, and she didn't want me to get some of the bad grades I was getting because she was afraid for me. She was afraid that that wrath that they would see from Jose towards the teachers, that it would be aimed at Erik. And we had many talks with many of my teachers about how I could improve my grades by them giving me easier tests, or I had a lot of hearing and auditory disabilities that they knew about, and so they thought about and did give me oral tests instead of written tests, aside from the class sometimes. Once again, I would object to statements concerning additional conversations with teachers as calling for hearsay. Court says, these last several sentences are non-responsive to the question. Anything referring to tests, special tests, and things of that nature are stricken as non-responsive. Do you remember the question? Says Mr. Levin. The court says, why don't you ask it? Mr. Levin says, all right. What did you believe, or what was your reason that you felt that you could not tell your teacher, or any teacher, that you were being molested by your father? I just didn't believe that they would help me. Was that based on incidents that had occurred wherein your teachers had indicated certain information about your father and mother? Either incidents that they told me about or instances that my father would come home and tell my brother and I and my mother about from school. Okay. Could you relate to the jury an incident that typically represents a reason why you felt you couldn't go to your teachers? Objection calls for hearsay. Mr. Levin says, not to prove the truth of the matter asserted, Your Honor. The court says, all right, well, he's already answered this in various ways, and under 352 of the Evidence Code, the objection is sustained. Did you ever feel that you could run away or get away from your mother and father? No. Why not? It was just a feeling I had that I couldn't. It just developed in me almost like a second instinct that there was nowhere that I was going to go. There was nowhere I could go to, uh, there was nowhere I could go to. There was nowhere they wouldn't find me, and I can't even explain why. I don't even really know. I bet it's because the one time when he did run away and they found him, and that probably wasn't the only incident or time where the parents made them know that they were stuck there. They couldn't leave. So I'm thinking that he probably just felt stuck. Did it ever occur to you to run away? Objection vague as to time. Well, the question asks for him to specify a time. So objection overruled. My question really goes to later in life at about 18 years old. Did it ever occur to you to just run away? No. At some point in time, you left the East Coast, did you not, and moved to California? Yes. And is that approximately in 1986, in August of 86? Right. How old are you then? 15. Where did your family move? We moved to Princeton. We lived in Princeton for about 6 months and we moved to California. We lived in the Oakwood apartments for a small period of time. When you came to California, you arrived here. Did you fear your parents then too? In what way? Well, was the molestation, did the molestation continue up until the time that you moved to California? No, it had stopped before then. When did it stop? I don't know. I don't have a very good recollection of the times in Princeton. I know that it happened in Princeton because I have flashes in my mind of kneeling on the wooden floor. But there, I know it ended sometime in there. I just don't know when, but sometime. You're talking about that Princeton estate home? Yes. Now, you didn't live there very long before you came to California, did you? About 6 months. And when you lived there, or when you left there and came to California, did Lyle Menendez stay behind in that estate home? Yes. Is that when Lyle Menendez was going to Princeton, or no? I think that my dad had worked out an arrangement. Objection calls for hearsay. Court says, well, it's also non-responsive. The witness says, I think so. Mr. Levin says, now, when you came to California, did Lyle Menendez come too? No. Do you think that after you had moved to California that the molestation was going to stop? Yes. Why did you feel that it was going to stop? It hadn't occurred in several months. I don't know. I moved to California and I just had an image of California and a happier attitude from life and was thrilled to be moving. For some reason in my mind, I just connected it that it would end. Did the relationship or did was there a significant change in the relationship between your mother and father that occurred that you observed following the move to California? Yes. What did it change from? Well, there was a period of time when my mother discovered that my father had been having an 8-year affair, and the entire relationship was sort of in the process of settling from that blowout and changing. Did your mother ever communicate in any fashion to you that she was aware that your father or she knew your father had an 8-year affair? Objection calls for hearsay. Sustained. Did your mother go through a significant period of depression? Yes. And was the depression associated to anything that you felt that she told you? Not so much she told me. I heard them talking. The Oakwood apartment is small. It was a small place and the walls were thin. I heard them talking in the car. My mother would frequently explode in anger at something my father did, or I would object at this point, says Mr. Khan. No question pending. Sustained. Your next question, please. Did you notice a difference between the way your mother and father treated you following the move to California? Yes. Did they appear to be having a certain degree of problems? In their marriage, yes. And did that affect you in any way? Oh, yes. How did it affect you? I was hoping that there was going to be a divorce and that my mother would move back to Princeton and I would be moving back with her. How many kids, how many kids wish for divorce? That's how badly, that's how bad his situation was. That this poor child, terrified, scared, alone, he wished that his parents would divorce so he could be free of the monster that was Jose. Not that Kitty was a whole lot better, but she still sucks and was abusive as a parent, but she did not essay Erik, as far as we know. She did essay Lyle, so that's a whole nother thing, which that's probably not even going to come in this trial now because Lyle's not testifying. So there's another difference in this trial and how it screws the defense by not having Lyle testify as before. Did you ever discuss this with your mother? My brother did. I did not. What was your mother's demeanor in California during the time that you were staying at the Oakwood Apartments? She drank a lot. She cried a lot more. She stayed in her bedroom a lot more. She tended to be a lot more sloppy in her dress or even getting dressed. It was a very gloomy, angry, sad time. Did you try to comfort her? Once. How? I would hear the crying from her bedroom, and I went to her once, and she told me to get out of the room, that it wasn't her business, and it was too difficult to communicate with her. We didn't have, I never, we didn't have that relationship in which we could communicate, so it was very difficult. Now, how did she react to you attempting to comfort her? She screamed, and I made the mistake. She was drunk at the time, and I didn't know. I just heard her crying, and she exploded and told me to get out of her room. Did you ever again try to communicate with her during this period of time about her problems? Not directly. Did she continue to drink alcohol? Yes. Did she take medication drugs? She took a lot of medication. Was she pretty much out of it most of the time? A lot of the time. Kitty was hopped up on meds and drugs to numb the way that she felt about what her own sadistic, evil husband was doing to their own children. But apparently it didn't bother her enough because she allowed it to happen and perpetrated abuse on them as well. So, did anything change with respect to your mother and father's relationship after she found out about the affair and that they were talking about divorce? Objection assumes facts not in evidence. Sustained. Did you hear your parents talking about divorce? Yes. Did they get a divorce? No. Did the fact that they did not get a divorce, and from anything you saw between the two of them, bear upon your state of mind with respect to the events that occurred on August the 20th? I guess so. Did you feel that they were closer together in any particular way? They had formed a new togethership, partnership, a bond, a unity that they had before in public in terms of their perception, but not in reality. That was stronger than it was in Princeton for different reasons. Now, before this new togetherness developed, was your mom wanting to take her own life? Objection calls for speculation. Sustained. Did you ever come across any letter or document written by your mother that caused you great concern? Yes. And from the reading of that document, what was the concern that you had? From reading it at first, I just thought she was going to leave me and never see me again. And I got a great concern. I was very worried about that, and so I called Lyle on the phone. What did basically this document say? Objection calls for hearsay. Mr. Levin says I'm not offering it to prove the truth of the matter, just Mr. Menendez's state of mind. Court says, is that a document that's referred to in other exhibits? Just a moment, Your Honor. He and Leslie Emerson confer. He says, yes, Your Honor, the court says it's an exhibit that's already been received in evidence. Mr. Levin says the 1211 tape is what I'm referring to. Court says, all right, go ahead, ask the question. Mr. Levin says, all right, was this document a letter? Yes. And who was it written by? My mother. What did the document essentially say, or how did you interpret it? My interpretation changed within an hour of reading it. At first, when I first read it, yes. It said my mother was going to be leaving my brother and I, and that my father would be taking care of us, and that essentially she would never see us again. Yikes. That would be a nightmare scenario for Erik. And what did you mean what did that mean to you at the time before you changed your mind? That she would be leaving my father and my brother and that I would never see her again. Upon reading this letter, what did you do? I called my brother. Where was he? In Princeton. And did you discuss it with him? I read it to him over the phone. What did Lyle Menendez say? Objection, hearsay, sustained. Did what Lyle Menendez say to you cause you to feel that the letter meant something different? Yes. And what did you, following the discussion with Lyle, feel that your mother now meant by the letter? I realized that it was a taking of your own life type of letter. Did that concern you? Yes. Did you do anything with respect to receiving that particular information? I tried to cry. I put in back where I found it and my brother, and at that point it was decided that my brother would have a conversation with my mother. To your knowledge, did he? Yes. Now, later, when this togetherness occurred between your mother and your father, did you feel that your mother was wanting to take her life at that time? She had wanted to for about a year. Till about 1988 or 87? Middle of 87. When did you find the letter? Right after I moved to California. You moved to California, I think I said in a question, in August of 86. Is that correct? Yes. Now describe that new togetherness that you witnessed between your mother and father. They were more of a team in the decisions. It had been decided that there would be no divorce, and so my father was much gentler to my mother, and specifically in public, was much nicer to her when she would explode in a rage, and the relationship dramatically changed in terms of my mother's strength or power when it concerned my dad. She would yell at him. I remember one time in an airport, and my father stood there while my mother was screaming about the fact that Louise, his girlfriend, was going to be in. Objection calls for hearsay. Sustained. The answer stricken as non-responsive. Had you ever seen your mother stand up to or yell at your father before this new togetherness? Yes. What would usually happen? My father would slap her or hit her. She would end up crying and bleeding. When you say she would be bleeding, did you ever happen to see any blood with respect to an attack or beating by your father to your mother? The next morning there would be blood on the bed or different places in the house. Where would the blood be on the bed? On the sheets. Now, after this new relationship, did your father hit your mother again in your presence? No. Did you ever hear your father hitting your mother after this new bond formed? Never. Did you ever see your father back down from your mother? Yes. Did the molestation end after you moved to California? For a period of time. Did it begin again? Yes. When did it begin again? In November, before my birthday. November of what year? That year we moved out. November of 86? Yes. So it would have been your November 27th, 86. Would have been your 16th birthday? Yes. And where did you live at that particular time? I was living in Calabasas. So you had moved from the Oakwood Apartments to the house in Calabasas? Yes. And what did your father do with respect to molesting you at approximately 16 years old? What kind of sex did you have with him? Knees. How did that make you feel? Pretty hollow, shattered for a period of time till I rebounded from the fact that it was obviously continuing. Now, when you moved to California, did your mother place any demands on you with respect to girlfriends? Yes. Had you had a girlfriend before that? In the formal sense, yes. And where did you have your first girlfriend that you remember? In Princeton Day School. Did you ever have a long relationship with a girl up until the time that you moved to California? No. Why is that? I was very afraid to touch a girl. I was scared that I would know something I shouldn't. She would tell something different about me, that I would be different from any other guy that she had ever touched. And so I refused to hold their hands or do anything of that sort. Poor Eric. When you moved to California, what did your mother tell you about girlfriends? That I was to get a girlfriend within 6 months. What did you understand that to mean? Uh, Sorry, I just lost my place. What did you understand that to mean? Why you would have 6 months to get a girlfriend? I don't know. Did you think it had something to do with the family image? Yes. Did you seek out a girlfriend to comply with your mother's demands? I didn't quite make the 6 month deadline, but a girl came into my life through tennis that I grew very fond of. What was her name? Kirsten. So they're not allowed to have like any kind of friendships or relationships until they become of age according to their parents, and then it's like, okay, now you have 6 months to get a girlfriend. What? Like, I haven't been able to foster any outside relationships outside of my father and my mother because you won't let me, and I can't have free time or friends or anything like that, and I'm supposed to now make relationships with people and have girlfriends and what? Like, I find that a little crazy. How did this relationship make you feel with Kirsten, sorry. Changed my life. In what ways? Kirsten was happy all the time. She was a sunshine. She was fun to be with and always excited, always happy to be with me. Made me feel very special, happy to be alive with her. In a sense, good about myself and bad about myself. When you say bad about yourself, Mr. Menendez, what do you mean? It meant that it drove the need to end what was happening between my father and I to a new level. What level was that? No level in particular, just a greater need. Did you at some point in time break off the relationship or try to break off the relationship with Kirsten? About a month into the relationship, my father came into my room and he had me get down on my knees, and I couldn't go out with her that night. And I called her up on the phone from a payphone, and I was crying, and I told her that I wanted to end the relationship, and she wouldn't let me. She wouldn't tell, or I wouldn't tell her why. And she was crying and she wouldn't let me, and I tried 2 or 3 different times. Did you continue a relationship with Kirsten? I ended it in September of that year. Why? Because I could no longer handle what was happening between my father and I and her. How did your mother react to the relationship ending between you and Kirsten? Mom grew very angry. She asked me if I wasn't man enough to be with a girl. She screamed at me, told me she wanted me to get back together with Kirsten. I did. It lasted about 20 days, and then she told me that I was to get a new girlfriend. And sorry, this happened all when you were almost 16, 17? Yes. Did you begin to change somewhat emotionally with respect to your desire to resist your father's molesting you at that time? Yes. Did things start to come into your mind that caused you to reevaluate your position with respect to your father's desires with you? I don't understand what you mean. Did you at any time try to resist your father when you lived in California? One time. And before you resisted, had you thought about it? Yes. What did you think about? Thought about hitting dad, pushing him, saying no, screaming at him, fighting him, hitting him with something, any way to stop it. And every time he came into my room, I would get scared and cowardice and freeze, and it wouldn't happen. Had you thought these thoughts before about resisting your father? Yes. And did it ever get beyond thoughts? Once. Before it got beyond thoughts, did you decide that you weren't going to do it or you couldn't do it? You mean give up thinking about it? Not give up thinking about it, but not take the thought any further and actually putting the thought of resisting your father into motion, into action. I did that one time. And when did this occur? In 1988. You were living in Calabasas at the house at that time? Yes. How old were you? I was 17 years old. Had you decided at any particular time before you resisted that you were going to resist your father next time he came to your bedroom? I had renewed my relationship with Kirsten a short time before, and I just had that urge it was building in me to end it. And I guess that's my answer. Did you have a plan as to how you were going to resist? No. Was there a specific incident that occurred where you resisted your father? Yes. And did this occur in the morning or in the day or during the day? It was during the day. Was it on a weekday or weekend? Do you remember? No. What happened in that particular time? It was on a weekend. Okay, what happened? My father came into my room and told me to get down on my knees, and I stood up from my bed and I said no. And my father grabbed me, hit me, and threw me on the bed. I hit my head against the wood of the bed. He came onto the bed and he grabbed me and he said he'd be right back. Did you fight him back at that time? After saying no? Yes. No. Did you stay in bed when he left and said, I'll be right back? I didn't move. Did he return? Yes. Did he return with something in his hands? Yes. Your Honor, may I have the bailiff obtain the exhibit? Yes, says the court. Mr. Levin says, Your Honor, I have a knife inside a sheath. The court says, okay, why don't you take it over to the podium? The bailiff will go with you as I indicated. That will be marked as Exhibit 362. It will be marked 362. Mr. Levin says, what was it that he returned with, Mr. Menendez? That knife. I'd like you to look at it. If the bailiff would perhaps demonstrate it or take it out for you. The court says, stay right here and open it up. The bailiff says, I won't go anywhere. Mr. Levin says, is that the knife that your father returned with? Yes. And did your father have that knife in a particular? Miss Abramson says, you're standing in front of the jury. We want to show them the exhibit. Mr. Levin says, sorry. Did you know where your father got that knife? From his company. Company named IVE, which was owned by Coralco. What did the knife have to do, from your understanding, with the company? Objection, irrelevant, overruled. It was a knife. It was a knife used in a Sylvester Stallone film, Rambo. Was the knife in the sheath when your father returned with it? No. How did he hold the knife? In its grip. What did he do? He came over to the bed, the side of the bed near the window where my head was on the wood, and put his hand down on my forehead, and he put the knife at my throat and told me that he should kill me. The next time he would. Then what did he do? He told me to take my clothes off, told me to kneel on the wood, had me bend over so that my hands were on my bed, and had sex. Then he left? Yes. How did you feel? I wanted to die. How did you feel, or did you feel that you wanted to take your own life? Yes. Objection leading. Overruled. The answer will stand. You indicated before that your father had used Vaseline on an occasion with you. Was there anything significant about Vaseline or keeping Vaseline in your room? Yes. And what was significant about Vaseline in your room? He brought it in when I was 12 years old, and I was told not to remove it from my room. Did you ever remove it from your room? No. Did you keep it in your room? It remained in my room. Your Honor, I have two photographs, one previously marked, oh, it is Exhibit 63. It was previously marked 269, and the other is marked 359. Both photographs, one is, I don't know why it's green. The court says one is Exhibit 63 and was in the previous trial as 269, and the other one was marked today as Exhibit 359. Okay. Mr. Levin says, Mr. Menendez, I'm showing you, first of all, what's been used earlier in this trial, Exhibit 63. Do you recognize that photograph? It's a picture of my room. And do you understand that that was your room and a photograph was taken during the following August the 20th, 1989? Yes. That's your room in Beverly Hills. Yes. I'm showing you what looks like a photo or a blow up of an area marked 359. Do you recognize the cupboard or the area, the dresser next to the bed? Yes. Was that a blow up of the same area that's depicted in exhibit number 63 to a specific item that's contained on a dresser on your bed? Yes. What is the item that you see in the dresser? A jar of Vaseline that my father put in my room in Beverly Hills. Mr. Levin says, Your Honor, this would be a very good time to take our recess as I am going into a new area. The court says, okay, we'll be in recess till Monday at 8:30. Don't discuss the case with anyone. Don't form any final opinions. Don't look at any of the news coverage or anything written about it or shown on any of the television or any radio or any conversations. Just disregard as such information about the case and do everything you can to avoid it, and we'll see you back here Monday at 8:30. The jury exited the courtroom, and the court says, all right, we'll be in recess until Monday at 8:30. And that is where we will end for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to hit that like button if you haven't done so already. And I will see you guys tomorrow with part 39, continuing on with Erik Menendez's direct examination. Thanks again for watching. Take care. Bye now.